Hello, my name is Ryan Gilroy, and this is my story. My story really begins in high school, probably began before that, but um, I was an average kid, grew up in a great home, parents loved me, had a great, awesome childhood, and upper middle class. I mean, had everything you could possibly think of with love and experience. And we did go to church a little bit, but, the Bible was never opened. We never really discussed faith. So it was kind of Christian in name. Um, but in my searching and in my life, I was like any average secular kid. I'd go out and party and get high and drunk with my friends and try to find search for pleasure. But in that search, I found that it actually made me more empty, made me more um, realize that there was an emptiness in me, and this emptiness grew and this darkness grew, and I started even going into some dark things and realizing that the more that I searched for through pleasure and other things, the heavier this weight was on me, and that weight and darkness just turned into a depression, and that depression just kept growing and growing until really it was my um, sophomore year when I was about 16 that that weight becomes so much that I started thinking about suicide. The just the heaviness that was on me. It was a suffering, but it was a spiritual suffering. It wasn't physical pain. It was emotional and spiritual pain. And so I had to find an answer. It was driving me crazy. And I always have a disclaimer on my testimony. I mean, Satan could have really messed up my true, honest searching for the truth by doing some crazy things. But the Bible says, and Jesus said, "Seek and you'll find; knock and the door will be opened." I didn't know that passage at the time, but I was honestly searching for the truth. The problem is when we search for the truth that I knew I couldn't go to people. If I went to a Catholic priest, he would die to defend his doctrine. Um, and same thing for the Muslim cleric; he would die to defend um, his beliefs, and same with a Jewish rabbi. Like everybody would die to defend their own belief, even though they're contrary and they were opposite of one another. And so I knew that I couldn't go to a person to ask questions about these things. The questions I was trying to answer is, where did I come from? Who am I? And is there a God? Is what is reality? Who is the God, if there's a God? And so I set aside a week, and I figured if God is real, He's going to be a God of a major religion, not just some cult of 5, 6 people, but He'd want to interact or save as many as possible. So I figured it's got to be one of the major religions. So I set aside a week, each day designated to a different god of a major religion. And I was going to pray honestly to search, even in my ignorance, if I was doing it the wrong way, that God would be able to come and show me how to talk to Him, how to approach, just in my own ignorance, just searching for the truth. And if by the end of the week I didn't have any kind of sign, no interaction, nothing, then the atheist would be right, that there is no God. Either that, or the God wasn't willing to come outside of the norms to approach somebody who's honestly searching them. And if that was the case, I didn't want to serve a God that didn't care. So in my conclusion, if I didn't get an answer and the atheists were right, well, then the atheists believe that life is simply a mistake. It's a chance, and that life has no meaning. It's just biology and chemistry, and we only give meaning to life as we give it. And death is simply just a absence of existence. There's no pain, no suffering, and I thought, well, if that's the conclusion, well, then I don't want to live and suffer through all of my life for no reason. Especially if life at the end of life is just simply the lack of pain, I wanted to get rid of that pain. So if that was the conclusion, I was going to come up with a way to end my life. So Monday came, and I had designated Allah as my designated God to pray to, and this is where I think Satan really could have done a number of different things to fool me. But I thank God that He protected this honest search for the truth. So I remember praying that night to Allah, just honestly, whatever I knew, just to say, do you exist? And nothing happened. And I remember crying myself to sleep until the next night. I prayed to Buddha, and there was no answer. Nothing happened. But that third night, I had some family members, some other experiences of going to church and understanding the basics of what Christianity was about. I understood that I was supposed to believe that Jesus was God's son that came through a virgin birth and lived a life without sin, died on the cross for me, was buried and rose again the third day and ascended to heaven. I was like, I basically poured out everything, the basics of what I knew. And I remember praying that night in ignorance and saying, I don't know all the things. I don't know if I feel it yet, but I'm just going to take a leap of faith and say, I believe that all this is true. And I'm going to just believe it. And I remember praying, Lord, just take my life and live it. I don't want to live it anymore. It's yours. Just literally gave him my life. And I remember instantaneously there was this feeling that I was floating. Now, I wasn't levitating or doing anything goofy or weird, but it was the reality that the heaviness, the spiritual heaviness, the weight that was on my chest was gone. My depression was gone. I just felt light as air, and I realized he didn't say a word to me, but something happened. And I realized at that moment he just answered my prayer. He just showed me that he is real. So, and I would love to say that experience is the thing that was the most important, but it wasn't. That night, I remember praying. Once I realized, I said, "Oh, I'm going to start reading my Bible. I'm going to start going to church." And I started going to a church just a couple houses down, where, I started learning the foundations of my faith and who I am and who Jesus is, and a few years later, I got baptized. But it was the thing that solidified my faith was not that experience, even though then was the first time I realized that he was real. But it was the experiences after that of following him and trusting him, reading his word, finding out the promises that he made and trusting those promises. And when I did, every single time those promises came true. That became more of a solidification of my faith than that experience. But that's what brought me to the realization of an honest search of the truth. And the truth showed up and saved my life. And now I live it for him. That's my story. I hope you find yours. God bless.